Spider-Man Far From Home sucks. This movie is genuinely terrible. Now, this is the most divisive movie in Tom Holland's trilogy, and for very good reason. Even if, a lot of the times I see people criticize this movie, they do it in a bad way. And now, even before I started looking at media more critically, I still never really thought Far From Home was very good. My rating basically went from 7 out of 10 to 4 out of 10, then finally where we are now at 2 out of 10. Shout out to SK for helping me out with this video, and he will also be making a video on why No Way Home sucks. Now, I still like No Way Home, even though I don't think it's a good movie, but me and SK disagree on the fact that Far From Home is the worst Spider-Man movie. He thinks that No Way Home is the worst Spider-Man movie, and by the time my video is out, his video on No Way Home will also probably be out, so make sure to watch that after this. But before I start laying out my criticism, remember, if you have any disagreements, be sure to stop by our Disagreement Day streams, where those disagreements can be voiced. We try to do these every week or so, but without further ado, let's get into it. So let's get into my first issue with the movie. S.H.I.E.L.D. apparently has no heroes available, and it's a very urgent situation, yet they don't send an agent to meet Peter when he keeps hanging up on them, like they do in Avengers 2012, Iron Man 1, Winter Soldier, Iron Man 2. This is just really stupid. The next couple issues I have are a bit more personal. One, I think the Peter Tingle thing is a stupid joke. I don't really care if you agree or disagree. And two, I hate the fact that Peter never sticks up for himself against Flash. Like, he just gets bitched around every fucking movie in the entire trilogy by Flash. That shit's just annoying. But during like the first 20 minutes of the movie, there's not much wrong with it. It's kind of just going through the motions while Peter gets to Europe, and it sets up his internal conflict for the movie. But then we get to this. Why does May decide to put the Spider-Man suit at the top of Peter's bag? This risks Peter's identity being discovered if his bags are checked, which then leads me to the fact that why doesn't she just tell Happy to drop it off when they land? Or at the very least, hide it under Peter's other clothes. One thing I forgot to mention is the fact that Peter's web shooters and his web fluid are sitting right there as well. Not sure why these aren't confiscated or at least looked into a little bit, but this is incredibly stupid given airport security, which doesn't even let people bring box cutters onto planes, so multiple jars of chemicals and web shooters would definitely raise some red flags, so this is stupid. Then, after a montage of Peter and his class in the city that contributes like next to nothing to the movie, we get to the water monster fight. And in the beginning of the fight, Peter tells Ned to get his class away. Then he grabs his web shooters. And this is really weird because if the movie is going for this whole Peter wants to take a break and leave Spider-Man behind right now, why does he just have his web shooters on him? This is pretty counterproductive to the arc they're trying to go for. Then when trying to help Mysterio, Peter just takes his mask off during the Mysterio fight for no reason. That's a pretty self-explanatory problem. And after this fight, why the fuck does Nick Fury decide to drop in on Peter's apartment after this whole water situation, instead of again telling him beforehand by sending an agent like I said earlier, but also just in general to talk about this situation? Not only does it risk Peter's identity again, but also Nick Fury's own secrecy. Why not take it outside? And what makes it even worse is they're literally talking about this while Peter's door is open. Then we get to one of the worst scenes in the entire movie. So the entire world is at risk of being destroyed, and Peter doesn't want to help. The fact that he even needs to be convinced of this is already dumb. But let's look at the reasons he gives. 1, his identity, despite the fact that he literally just helped out earlier with the water monster. But okay. 2, I just want to go on a vacation with my girlfriend. Okay, MJ is gonna die, and so will everyone you know, so that's a shit excuse. Next. 3, he doesn't think he's good enough. So, do you think you're not good enough to be alive either? Because that's the threat. And 4, he says his aunt will kill him. Bitch, please, she packed the suit. Did the writers for this movie just forget about this line from Infinity War?
You can't be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood.
None of these excuses work, and Peter is blatantly character assassinated in this scene. He also says after this, I'm just happy I don't have to go to Prague. What the fuck? Your main reason you don't want to do this is because you don't feel like you're good enough. Which again, already is a dumb reason, which I already went over. So now why do you turn around and say this? Seeming as though you're happy about this, instead of worried your world might fucking die and you're gonna do nothing about it. And I have another problem with this. You're telling me not a single sorcerer could be used to help fight the elementals? You're telling me literally all of them are fighting something bigger than this. Like, not even Rhodey is willing to stop whatever mission he's on to maybe stop the end of the fucking world? Now, depending on context, I can excuse stuff like this. But these people have literally so many connections to different heroes that it's just so hard for me to believe that they can't spare at least a couple sorcerers and at least War Machine for the end of the world. world. You want to say Captain Marvel's off planet or Thor's off planet, that's fine. Doctor Strange is out doing something in another dimension, same with Wong, that's fine. At least in this movie, they actually try to call those people, unlike another movie. But there are so many heroes in the MCU at this point, and they have connections to pretty much all of them, that this is just so hard to believe. And also, why does Nick Fury waste time doing all this unnecessary bullshit with Peter, moving his class instead of just continuing to push him? He literally just gives up so easily after this conversation with Peter, and this also puts Peter's whole class in the crossfire by moving them to the same city. And Peter also doesn't get pissed at Fury for putting his classmates in the same city where stuff will be going down. I don't understand why Nick Fury doesn't just threaten Peter with doing this, instead of actually doing it so that Peter will comply. And before anyone says it in the comments, yes, I'm aware that Talos is Fury right now. It's not actually Nick Fury. This is still very bad on Talos' part because from his character in Captain Marvel, he very much cares about children, so it doesn't make sense for him to endanger them like this. Very unnecessarily. And if he didn't have morals like this, it would be a problem with Nick Fury for even putting him in control of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now while he's off planet. Then when they arrive to this other place, before Peter walks in to get undressed in front of the S.H.I.E.L.D. lady, we see that Dimitri is standing outside keeping watch. So this means that he just let Brad walk in on the Russian lady and Peter, and they also don't even lock the door where she's talking to Peter. And another thing about this scene, like, Peter is actively taking his clothes off in front of an adult. Now, obviously, this initial intent doesn't make this scene inherently sexual, as they're trying to get Peter a suit. But then Brad walks in, and the joke makes this scenario sexual. Yeah, okay.
Now pay attention, Pimpin'. Pay attention, Pimpin'. You're a pedophile. Prove me wrong. You're a pedophile. Prove me wrong. You're a pedophile. Prove me wrong.
Anyways, we move on to the bus scene where we start to see what Edith can do. What this movie does is have Tony give Peter one of the most advanced security systems on the fucking planet. This is already character assassination of Tony in and of itself, but also, he doesn't give the program a training protocol like he has in Spider-Man Homecoming. So he gives these to Peter without even teaching him how to use them. Also, why the hell would Nick Fury even agree to giving these glasses to Peter? But also, if Tony has these drones, why doesn't he use them in the final battle of Endgame? They can also go invisible, yet he doesn't implement this tech into his Iron Man suits. But also, if this is supposed to stop the next Thanos level threat or something of that nature, why aren't these drones more advanced? Why not also have the Iron Legion back up and running? But another issue, the only defense I can think of for why he made Edith to begin with, stemming off what he learned in Age of Ultron about how problematic this kind of stuff can be, was because that what happened with Thanos caused him to regress as a character, which would have caused him to make Edith. But outside of that fact, they should have been used in Endgame. Now, Rhodey having the Iron Man suit is fine because he trusts him enough, and he's known him for like his whole life. And if that manages to get stolen, it would be a lot less of a problem than this security system. But this whole thing is really annoying in general because Tony doesn't even trust the Avengers with his Iron Man suits. There's only been one person he has ever trusted with one, being Rhodey, yet he's willing to give Peter Edith, when he knows Peter is not even remotely responsible enough to handle this, on top of the other priorities that he knows Peter deals with. And I do want to clarify that I don't have a problem with Tony giving Peter any Spider-Man suit in Homecoming, Infinity War, or Civil War, and that's because in the context of all those movies, Tony is desperate due to the fact that the Avengers are either currently falling apart or already have fallen apart, and the regular Spider-Man suit Peter has from Tony is nowhere near as advanced as his Iron Man suits. Same even goes for the Iron Spider suit, and the only reason Peter got the Iron Spider suit was again because Tony was desperate for Earth to have defenders with the Avengers being so messed up right now. And also because Peter was about to die in Infinity War. This whole sequence just causes so many world building issues in the MCU that didn't exist beforehand. It character assassinates Tony, but there's gonna be more of that. And it's just fucking terrible. Now with all that clarified, let's move on to some other things because we have a lot more problems in this one scene alone. So Peter waits till they all get on the bus, a good distance away from where Brad initially took the picture of him, before asking Edith to delete the photo from Brad's phone. But we have even bigger problems here. Peter is given a global security system from Tony Stark, and he's so fucking dumb that he labels Brad a target to that AI. And also, Tony's design here is stupid because there isn't even an ask for confirmation on the hit. And two, why doesn't Peter just immediately say cancel the strike? He has so much time to cancel this strike, this drone literally has to go all the way from space to his bus. And during that time, Peter's just doing jack shit. He then lets Flash take the glasses, which is just like, okay, sure, I guess that makes sense. But instead instead of just canceling the strike, he risks his identity getting revealed by doing this stupid shit. And 3, MJ was literally looking at Peter while he was doing this thing, yet later in the movie, she says she doesn't know for sure that he's Spider-Man. Okay. Also, how does she or anyone not hear the drones shooting or getting destroyed? Like, what the fuck? And 4, in the end of the movie, it literally asks Mysterio if he's sure he wants to fire the drones because he's in the firing zone, yet it doesn't do the same for Peter right here when he does the hit on Brad. Then we get to Prague, and once again, knowing that the elementals will attack like earlier in the movie, they still don't try to evacuate the city. Peter should also do this thing since he has access to Edith and he can send a bunch of messages on people's phones. And this isn't real life, this is the MCU. So if you actually put an Amber Alert on someone's phone in the MCU, they might listen because of its history. This is character assassination for S.H.I.E.L.D. once again, and Peter. After looking at the scene again, I noticed that Maria Hill did mention that they tried to evacuate the city, so I take back that original criticism, at least on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s part, not on Peter's part, because if he actually did what I just said, then people would have actually probably been trying to leave or do something. We could have also gotten a scene of him doing this, but this part is fair enough on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s part. However, we still have the fact that Talos knowingly endangered a bunch of teenagers, but also it's incredibly stupid to me that the city won't evacuate their people, given the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. and the news literally have proof of this happening, and the damage that it can cause. I guess this city is just ran by a bunch of fucking morons, but okay. But I also have to ask, why doesn't Peter, or S.H.I.E.L.D., try to call the fire department? Or why not use as many resources as possible to try to get water to defeat the fucking elemental? The fire elemental. They could unironically pull up with a bunch of water guns and be more productive here. But I have an even bigger problem in this scene. Peter mentions how his friends are in danger now because they were brought here, which makes Fury start yelling at Peter because of the stuff that happened on the bus, and telling him he's not ready. Now, remember this scene from Spider-Man Homecoming?
No thanks to you.
No thanks to me? Those weapons were out there and I tried to tell you about it, but you didn't listen. None of this would have happened if you would just listen to me.
So now I ask, why is Peter just sitting here taking this shit from Fury? This is just completely out of character. Why does he not yell at Fury for putting his entire classmates in danger by moving him to the city? Then we get to the opera house before Peter suits up in his black costume. Why doesn't Peter just act like he's sick instead of going to the opera, or simply just say that he doesn't feel like going to a boring ass opera and stay at the hotel? Instead, he goes to the opera house and this just makes him look really suspicious for leaving in the middle of it. And during the fight with the elemental, Peter knocks out one of the visual projectors on Mysterio's drones, yet he isn't alerted about this for some reason. Then it's also shown one of his crew members knew the whole time and didn't tell him, which is stupid in and of itself because they have the same goals as Mysterio. But again, Mysterio should already have an alert for himself, and this causes MJ and Peter to find out the truth about Mysterio. Also, during this fight with the fire elemental, you know, the thing that consumes metal, why does S.H.I.E.L.D. literally drive metal cars to pull up to the scene of the fight, where the thing being fought gets stronger with metal? After this, Peter and Mysterio go into a bar, and Peter's not wearing his mask, wearing the same suit that he just had on while fighting the elemental. And they are actively talking about what just happened in public. You can't make this shit up. I don't understand how writers can be this stupid. But it gets worse because then Peter gives Mysterio the fucking Edith glasses when he barely even fucking knows him. It's like they made this movie with the personal goal of making Peter a complete dumb fuck. And while Mysterio is giving this big speech, which has even bigger problems I will talk about later, he says that this girl found out that the glasses were being given to Peter.
To Janice. After Tony died, she was the one who discovered that Edith was being handed over not to us, not to the Defense Department, but to a child.
But how the fuck does she figure this out? Like, genuinely, how the fuck? Then after Peter finds out the truth about Mysterio, he starts getting into his suit, again, while his hotel door is open. Peter just doesn't give a fuck about his identity in this movie. He also just leaves Ned and MJ while they could be actively in danger. And even if he doesn't want to waste time doing that here, he could at least tell them to go to the police station or something. And when meeting up with Fury, Peter again takes his mask off in a car that doesn't even have tinted windows. Why the fuck does a S.H.I.E.L.D. car not even have tinted windows? And after Peter just went through this whole illusion scenario with Mysterio, he's still at the end of it doesn't check if Fury is real or not, which is already stupid as fuck for obvious reasons, but it's made worse by the fact that he endangered even more people by saying more people might know besides Ned and MJ. Oh my fucking god. After this, Happy goes to meet with Peter, yet for some reason doesn't bring the Iron Spider suit. I don't know why Peter didn't ask him to bring that. But then we get to this next scene, which is hailed by a lot of people as the best scene in the movie. Yeah, and this scene fucking sucks. Nothing brought up is built up in a way that makes sense, so the payoff, quote quote-unquote that happens in this scene doesn't feel earned. And the way Tony is framed by Happy as being in the right for bringing in Peter during Civil War is really dumb, because Tony shouldn't have brought in Peter during Civil War. It was a mistake on his part because he was desperate. And it's also framed as if he's in the right for giving Peter the Edith glasses. And also, Tony never second-guessed Peter, but Tony absolutely second-guessed Peter. Did these writers just not watch Homecoming or Infinity War? Then Peter starts making the suit, and we literally see the option for the Iron Spider suit, yet he decides not to make that for some fucking reason. And also, they start playing AC/DC, obviously trying to mirror Tony, but that's just completely counterproductive to the arc of not needing to be the next Iron Man. Then we get to the big final battle. And you might be wondering why I haven't talked about Mysterio yet, but don't worry, there's a whole section of the video dedicated to him. Anyways, why doesn't Peter program his suit to have the little drone thing from Homecoming? He could literally put a taser on it and knock out Mysterio. Or also, why not just make an EMP or electric web grenades? And also, we know the Edith drones can go invisible, yet Mysterio doesn't do this to kill Peter. There's also a bunch of drones in the background of the fight, just doing jack shit, literally doing nothing. I don't know why. They also have flames, sonic booms, red hot lasers, tasers, and bullets. So I don't understand how the fuck Peter survives this at all. There's just literally no fucking reason he should be able to survive this. And Mysterio's an idiot. We then see that the drones aren't bulletproof for some fucking reason, which is incredibly stupid. But also, why doesn't Mysterio send more drones after Fury after the first one got destroyed? And as well, send more drones after Peter's class, as Flash is actively live streaming and MJ and Ned know the truth. But Mysterio finally ends up sending more drones after Peter's classmates. Don't know why he didn't do that to begin with, but he finally did it. And for some reason, they're not all firing missiles that they have. Also, why the hell doesn't Happy have some sort of weapon that he can use? Something as simple as a pistol? And Happy just says outright to all the people in the room, that majority of which don't even know Peter's identity, he says, "I'm in love with Spider-Man's aunt." And I'll just let you guys figure out the problem with that line of dialogue. Like, I feel like I don't even need to explain why that's a problem. Then Peter breaks into Beck's place and hits the fishbowl on his head, and the drones stop working. So this means that it makes sense for Peter's friends to stay alive, right? No, because they start working again like 2 seconds later, so Peter's friends should be dead. Mysterio then has a wall of drones protecting him with weapon capabilities that I've already explained, and instead of using all of them, they only use bullets. Meanwhile, Peter has a bulletproof suit. And they also fly towards him, allowing Peter to close the distance and win the fight instead of just bombarding him with bullets. Even if he has a bulletproof suit, this is still a better option than what they do. And I don't understand why Mysterio doesn't just turn invisible and dip while the drones deal with Spider-Man. But then Peter gets access back to the glasses for some fucking reason when he just gave full control to Mysterio earlier in the movie. But the only defense I can see someone giving is, oh, maybe they had dual control. But if they had dual control, why could Peter not control Edith throughout the entire battle? You're telling me there's no backup protocols in place for this? There's no other way to access Edith other than the glasses. This is stupid as fuck, but I guess with this movie it's just not surprising by now. But then Peter gets character assassinated once again by just letting Beck bleed out instead of trying to get him medical attention. Even if there's a high chance he's gonna die, Peter would still try to help him from not dying. Again, I guess the writers just forgot about Homecoming, but whatever. And Peter is once again not giving a fuck about his identity on the bridge while talking to MJ because he just doesn't have his mask on, and then he kisses her, which would put her at risk. Jesus Christ. And one final problem that I want to bring up, which is more personal. So he leaves Uncle Ben's suitcase behind, and in this scene where they mention the bags with Aunt May, they're just like, yeah, fuck them bags, which is just like, even if you want to say that we have no clue what his relationship was like with Ben in this universe, it's still just disrespectful on a meta level. Now that we're done talking about Peter's character, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s character, the plot, now let's get into Mysterio, because he needs a whole section in and of himself, because he's one of the worst MCU villains of all time. Mysterio doesn't work as a villain at all in this movie. Besides Jake Gyllenhaal being a great actor, there's nothing about his character that's well written. And the way he's included in the movie is another among many things that character assassinate Iron Man. So let's just start with that. So in Civil War, we can assume that Tony himself made the barf technology because this is how the movie frames it. But what Far From Home does is say Tony stole the experiment that Quentin made and called it his experiment, which just directly contradicts the reason he even gave the MIT students funding to begin with. It was so they could shape their own legacies and reshape the future. But instead, what Far From Home does with Tony is the direct opposite of that. Also, remember Whiplash from Iron Man 2, where Tony saw exactly what could happen when Tony takes someone's ideas and fires them and ruins their life? Well, guess what? He does the exact same thing again to Quentin Beck. And what makes it even worse is that he fired Quentin because he was emotionally unstable. So we have Tony being out of character on two fronts here. And also, if this was the case, why did Tony never tell S.H.I.E.L.D. to, keep an eye on or put Beck on a watch list or something? He knows how dangerous these people can be, especially with the technology that Quentin created. But also, the way this movie frames the technology and its capability also causes even more world-building issues. Because if Tony was able to use the technology this way, he would have absolutely implemented this into his own combat arsenal. This wasn't a problem before, because we can just easily assume that with the way this tech has been set up and the showcase of it in Civil War, that it can't be used in combat, and it's limited to this. Now, how does this movie try to account for this, you may ask?
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a bunch of scraps.
The integration of my illusion tech with your weaponized drones.
Do the writers not realize that they just shot themselves in the foot by saying the guy who's implied in Iron Man 1 to be nowhere near Tony Stark's level of mechanical expertise? They're saying that guy did something that Tony Stark couldn't do at all. The same guy who figured out time travel. The same guy who made all of these Iron Man suits. The same guy who made the best artificial intelligence system on the planet not once but twice. The same guy who created a new element. You get the point. Now you might say, well, some people are better in other areas of tech than even people who are smarter than them. And that's fine in some circumstances, but in this, all it says was this guy just implemented the illusion tech into the drones, which is just completely unbelievable to me, because pretty much all of the intelligence feats that I just mentioned for Tony are him implementing tech into other tech. So it's just insane to me that he wouldn't be able to do this. And again, the only reason I think it's fine in Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame is because none of these movies even establish that it's possible to do, which is also why I wouldn't criticize movies with Iron Man in them after Avengers 1 for Tony not having invisible Iron Man suits, because no other movies establish that Tony could implement the deflector technology that S.H.I.E.L.D. uses on the helicarriers into his suit. Then the next major problem that just affects Mysterio throughout the entirety of the movie is him working with S.H.I.E.L.D. or wanting to join the Avengers. I don't know why he wants to do either of these things. One, anytime that he would ever fight with the Avengers, there's a huge risk in them finding out about his illusion tech. They would also be at risk of showing up to a possible fight with the Elementals. And two, him working with S.H.I.E.L.D. also makes an unnecessary risk of this being discovered as well. His plan could work just as good, if not better, if he simply explained to S.H.I.E.L.D. in the beginning of the movie the stakes of the Elementals and explained the same proof that got him on their side to begin with. But instead of actually working with them directly, he could just say he doesn't trust them enough to work with them in this fight. Or he could simply say he doesn't want more parties involved so they don't get hurt. And he could cause these elemental attacks at random in different places around the world so that he heavily mitigates any risk of himself being discovered as a fraud by one of the Avengers. And again, even if his initial plan works, what is he gonna do from there? He can't kill all the Avengers if they discover the truth, and he can't keep up this front while fighting with them. So why is he trying? If anything, being a solo hero that takes down world-ending threats alone would have him be more regarded by the public than any of the other Avengers. But it's not just the basis of his plan that's stupid, the basis for this whole fucking plot even happening is stupid as well. So it's established in Captain Marvel that Skrulls can scan recent memories of people that they, turn into. Yet, Talos Fury never does this to check if Mysterio is lying or not about the Elementals. This isn't a problem with Mysterio because he couldn't possibly know about this, but it is a problem with Talos, and if Talos does this simple thing, the whole plot doesn't fucking happen. And to add on top of this, if they even did just a little bit of a background check on Quentin Beck, they would have figured out that he used to work in Stark Industries, and possibly even figured out that he was fired for being unstable. So even if he was to use the excuse that he was his doppelganger, surely this would raise some red flags. Then another problem I have is, why does Mysterio go up on the roof to talk to Peter when it risks Peter figuring out his illusion tech? The only way I can see him getting up to that roof is by using the stairs to get up there, but he would have to not only open the door, which might make noise, but he'd also have to walk behind Peter and then sit down next to him for his suit to be able to land, which would also make noise. I don't even know how Peter doesn't hear any of this, but I also don't know why Beck does this to begin with, because it's a major risk. Then, after Mysterio gets the Edith glasses, he reveals that the entire bar that Peter just walked out of was illusion tech. And there's a big problem with this. One, Peter barely even left and Mysterio immediately takes down the illusions. What's his plan if Peter decides to walk back into the bar to say something else, or if Peter forgot something and comes back? And two, it doesn't even have to be Peter that comes back. What if someone just simply sees this through the window and decides to record it? Then Mysterio finds Peter and puts him through this illusion sequence, and instead of just killing him with the drone, he relies on Peter getting hit by a bullet train, when he should know that this wouldn't even 100% kill him. I don't understand why he doesn't just make sure he's dead by shooting him with the drones. And that about wraps up all the problems with Mysterio that I didn't already talk about in the plot section of the video. And that also wraps up why I think this is the worst Spider-Man movie. And I'm not saying there's nothing to like about this movie, because I find some of the action scenes fun to watch, even if most of them have really stupid shit surrounding them. I think some of the jokes are funny.
You're gonna be a cool teacher right now. You gotta stop doing that, okay? It is weird. No more photos on the bathroom. Urinal or stalls. Earth, wind, fire, water? Oh no. They join forces like the Power Rangers.
But do you want the first shift or the second? I could take either.
Give me the third shift. Take an Ambien.
Mr. Dell is the best character in this whole movie. The CGI and music is really good. The acting is good. There is stuff to like about this movie, but on a writing level, this movie just fails at pretty much everything. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you would either support me on Patreon or become a channel member on my YouTube for as little as $1 a month. I hope you all enjoyed, and yeah.